Hello everyone and welcome to this video on modeling components in Fusion 360. In this video we are going to be modeling the support strut component that you can see on screen now. If you would like to follow along with this exercise, you can download an engineering drawing of this component from the link in the video description below. Okay, so first things first, we're going to create a new design for our new Fusion 360 component, and we do that by clicking the New Design tab at the top of the window. Now for this particular component, I'm going to create all of my 2D information inside a single two-dimensional sketch and then use multiple extrude features in order to construct the main body of my component. So in order to create that sketch, I go to the Create section and I go to the Create Sketch button, and this time I'm going to sketch on the XZ plane, or the front plane of my component. Now this is a deceptively complicated component, and I need to think very carefully about how I construct the geometry for this particular component. So the first thing that I'm going to do is draw a rectangle to represent the width of the central portion here, and then another rectangle to represent the U section at the end of the component. So I'm going to go back to my component and get my 2-point rectangle tool and sketch a rectangle from the origin of the component out towards the right hand side, and then I'm going to get sketch another rectangle from the lower right hand corner of that initial rectangle and somewhere up here. Okay, so I've got an approximate shape of my support strut, and now I need to apply some dimensions as per the engineering drawing. So I know that the distance from the top of the component to the bottom here is 50 millimeters. So if I just apply that correctly, so I go to sketch dimension, distance between the top and the bottom is 50, and I know that the width here is 36. Okay, I'm also given some lengths, but because of the fully rounded end of this particular support strut, I need to add this feature into my 2D sketch before I start dimensioning things. If I go back to my component, I'm going to get my center diameter circle tool, and I want a circle which is centered on this end face and goes all the way up to this edge. So if I hover roughly over the center of this line, I will see that I get a blue equilateral triangle, and that indicates that I'm on the center of that particular line. So if I hover over this and I click to place the center of my circle and then move out towards the edge, and then I'm going to move my mouse until I am lined up with this the corner of my rectangle and snap my circle there. We can see that that circle is fully constrained because it's got black lines, so I don't need to add any more information at this time to that particular circle feature. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a construction line which runs down the center of the component in this direction, and we'll see why we're doing that in a minute. So I'm going to go to my line tool and I'm going to sketch a line from the center of this circle all the way across to the right hand side of the component. Once I've done that, I can press escape to get out of my tool, and rather than this being a solid line, I want this to be a construction line. So if I click the line and then right click and hold, I get the context menu, and from this context menu I can pick normal/construction, and that will turn that line into a construction line. Now construction lines are very useful in sketches because they allow us to put in more information than we might need to create an extrude or a revolve feature, but we can use these construction lines to construct and create other geometry within the sketch without creating solid profiles that might cause confusion later on. Okay, now that I have this construction line, I'm going to add in these circles which represent the holes at this end of the component. So I go back to my component, I get my circle tool, and I'm going to add a circle here which is centered on the first circle that we sketched, and then I'm going to add another circle which is further down the body of the component but which is on this construction line that we've created. We can see that these circles are both blue, which means they are not yet fully constrained. So I'm going to go to my sketch dimension tool and I'm going to dimension these as 13 millimeters in diameter as per the drawing. Now we can see on this second circle that even though I've given it a diameter, it's still blue, and that's because the circle can still be anywhere on this line. We've not specifically set the location of this circle yet. So again, I go to my sketch dimension tool and I'm going to pick the center of this circle and then the right hand side of the component, and I'm going to set this to be 90mm as per the engineering drawing. The next thing that I need to do is dimension the overall length of my component, which from the engineering drawing I can see is 130mm. So the distance from this center of this circle here to the edge is 130, so I can dimension that. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension the width of the protrusion here, which I can see from the engineering drawing is 36mm. So again, I get my sketch dimension tool and I dimension this to be 36mm. Okay. Now at this stage I can see that all of my sketch lines have gone black, which means that the sketch is fully constrained and has all the information that it needs. But I'm still missing some features from this 2D sketch, so I need to keep going, and I need to construct the 2D sketch lines necessary to create the central U-shaped slot and the protrusion around the edge of that slot. So I'm going to get my circle tool again, and I'm going to put a circle approximately where I want the end of my U-shaped slot to be. Now I know that the diameter of this circle, so the distance between this face and this face, is 15mm as per my engineering drawing, so I'm going to dimension the diameter there to be 15mm, and I know the location of this slot because that's also given on the engineering drawing. So I know the distance from the center of this circle to the bottom is 18mm, and I know the distance between the center of the circle and this edge is also 18mm. So I now have a sketch representing, or a circle representing the bottom of that slot, and what I need to do is add lines in order to construct the rest of that slot. So I go to my line tool and I can create a line from the edge of my circle here all the way up to the top of my component, and I can do the same on the other side. Now we can see that Fusion 360 has automatically added tangent constraints between those lines that I've sketched and the edge of my circle. If this had not been the case, if I had a line like this for example, I could add that tangency manually by going to the tangent constraint in the constraint section and then simply clicking on this line and clicking on the circle. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of that line by undoing that particular feature and deleting the line as well. Okay, so the last thing I need is a sketch representing the outside of this U-shaped protrusion. So I can do this again by going into my sketch, getting my circle diameter tool, and I can again place a circle on the same center point and move that outwards. I don't specifically know the diameter of this circle just yet, so I'm going to create the rest of my lines and dimension those as per the engineering drawing, and hopefully there's enough information there to keep this sketch fully constrained. So once I place that circle, I'm going to get my line tool. Again, I'm going to sketch from the edge of my circle to the top of my component, and I know that the distance between these two lines is 29mm as per the engineering drawing, so I can dimension that as 29. So we can see there that all of my sketch lines have now turned black, meaning that my sketch is fully constrained. If we wanted to at this stage, what we could do is we could use the trim tool to remove bits of line that we don't feel that we need. There is a slight risk involved in this though, so if I went to modify and trim, I can start removing perhaps bits of the sketch that I don't need. The risk that I mentioned is that you remove a bit of a sketch which has a constraint applied to it, and that makes your sketch no longer fully constrained. So actually what I would do is I would leave these bits of sketch line in, because it doesn't actually present too much of a problem for us when we create features later on. So I'm done with this sketch at this stage, so I can press the Finish Sketch button, and now all I need to do is create my extrude features. So if I go to Create and Extrude, I'm going to select all of the geometry that I wish to extrude for the central body of the component. Just by clicking all of the different profiles, and I know that this extrude feature is 12mm wide as per the engineering drawing. Now, for this particular component, rather than creating a one-sided extrude, we're going to create a symmetric extrude. And if I look at this extrude feature as it is now, this looks a little bit too thick when I look at my reference component. And what's happening here is that Fusion 360 has defaulted to a half-length measurement when I've changed this to a symmetric direction. So we just want this to be the whole length, and we can see that looks much better now. So I've now created the central portion of my support strut component, so I can press OK. And now I just need to create an extrude feature for this ridge, or this U-shaped ridge around the center. So again, I can create another extrude. Unfortunately, Fusion has automatically hidden my sketch. So if I go to the sketches drop down in the browser window and I click the eye icon next to sketch 1, I can re-enable that sketch. And then again, I go to extrude, and it's going to ask me which profiles I want to extrude. Now, we have a particular problem here because Fusion 360, when we try and select profiles, will pick the surface which is closest to our mouse. So because we are representing a 3D component on a two-dimensional screen, obviously wherever we hover our mouse, there is additional geometry or features or sketches behind what we're picking here. So in this case, we have a sketch which runs through the center of the component. We want to pick this U shape, but we can't because Fusion is defaulting to picking the surfaces nearest our mouse. One way we can get around this is by using the selection filter. So we get to where we want to select that piece of U shape. We press and hold the left mouse button, and we get a little drop down saying which things we can select. So in this case, I want this bit of profile here. And I can repeat this process all the way around in order to pick the all of the profiles that I need for this particular feature. I have all of those now, and I know from the engineering drawing that these need to be extruded a distance of 20 millimeters. And again, Fusion has defaulted to some incorrect parameters within the extrude dialog box, so I just need to fix these. So again, I want this to be a symmetric extrude. I want the measurement to be the whole length, not half of the length, and I want to add material, not cut material away, so I need to change the operation from cut to join. Once I've done that, I can press OK, and I can see that I've got the main body of my component, and I no longer need the sketch, so I can press the eye icon next to the sketch to turn it off and keep my component nice and neat. The final thing that I need to do is add 2 fillets or radii to my component to finish it off. So I go to the modify command and fillet. For some reason, Fusion has automatically picked a line. I don't want this line, so I can remove it from the selection box, and I want to add a fillet here of 18 millimeters. I can press OK, and then on my final fillet, if I go to modify and fillet, I can add a fillet here of 14 millimeters as per the engineering drawing. And that completes our component. So just a quick final check. I can see that I've created the main body of the component, the U-shaped slot, the U-shaped protrusion, and all of the necessary holes, and that looks correct. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.